Welcome to the Enlightened Pet Behavior Podcast. I'm your host, Susan Light. In a world overflowing with conflicting advice and often misguided information, my mission is to be your trusted source for accurate, kind, and truly effective strategies to understand and shape your pet's behavior. Join me as we shed light on common challenges and work to foster a deeper, more harmonious bond with our beloved furry family members. If you find the show helpful and enjoyable, please consider showing your support. Subscribing, following, rating, reviewing, and sharing with your friends takes a moment, but it significantly boosts the show's visibility and helps more pet parents discover it. Thank you for your support. Let's get into it. Today, we're talking about stubborn, disobedient dogs. This is something I hear from clients again and again. He knows what to do and he just doesn't want to do it. Is that true? Is that helpful? What can we do in these situations? My guest is a dog trainer and behavior specialist holding a certificate in training and counseling from the esteemed Academy for Dog Trainers and is also a fear-free certified professional. She earned her bachelor's degree in animal science and began her career as an environmental educator, where she cared for and trained non-releasable wildlife for educational programs in schools. Today, she lives and works in York, Pennsylvania, where she's the owner of Modern Manners Dog Training. She specializes in helping dogs with reactivity, resource guarding, stranger-directed aggression, using a compassionate, rewards-based approach to create lasting behavior change. Please welcome Michelle Pennarola. Welcome, Michelle. Thanks for coming to talk to me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. I'm super excited to talk about this topic because it's actually the second episode that I will have done. We did an episode seasons and seasons ago, but it's such a pervasive myth and something that I hear all the time. So I think it's worth touching on again. And I know you said that you hear this a lot too.
I do. It's one of the most common things that people use to explain why their dog is not listening to them. And it's also sometimes people bring up in relationship to a breed. Like, oh, I've read online that this breed is very stubborn and hard to train. Or they'll compare this Doberman or this hound dog to another of that same breed that they had in the past and say, "Oh, this dog is so stubborn compared to my last one." But it's very common.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not true, right? Like, let's start there, right? Every time we're here, like, they know what they're supposed to do. They just don't want to. They look right at me while they're doing the bad thing. They're trying to,
They feel right
So
for me.
exactly. So from a human lens, if we're looking at this behavior as if a human were doing it, we're perceiving stubbornness. But that's not actually what's going on, right?
Right. So I think of it as two main buckets for how to explain what's going on. And sometimes the reason falls into like both of those categories. But um if we're talking about a dog who is bouncy, well socialized, you know, generally comfortable in their day-to-day life, it's not an anxious dog. Very likely the reason your dog is not listening or being disobedient or stubborn is just because the dog is undertrained and the dog has not had uh, the experiences to build up to the level of what you're asking them to do. So, if you're asking your dog to recall out of a field where they're enjoying all these amazing smells, and you're asking them to come off of that smell, all that fun, you're essentially asking for step 15 in a training plan that has been worked on for weeks and weeks without doing any training. Something I say to my clients sometimes to drive this home is that we don't teach calculus to kindergartners, right? We have to start at building blocks. Step one, and recall the dog, for example, from inside the house when you are in the house from 10 feet away, and then build up gradually to the field example. Um, and then, the other reason could just be that the dog is in a environment or in a situation that is just also too distracting for what you're asking. So you have to again build in practice where that dog is recalling off distractions in easier environments, just building them up to that point. So that is one possibility of what's happening. And I think once you explain that to clients, to pet owners, that makes sense to them, right? They kind of understand like, oh, yeah, if I was teaching my child how to read, I'm not going to give them War and Peace and have that be our starting point. So that's one category of what's going on. The other is, as we're well aware, there are a lot of underlying issues that dogs can experience that cause them not to listen. And that can be anxiety, it can be pain, it can be, some type of undiagnosed illness that is causing them discomfort, causing them pain. And in these cases, people don't have often the tools and the understanding to notice that the dog is really actually struggling and not being stubborn.
Yeah. That's so true. So let's start there and we'll come back to the other
Mhm.
situation where, it just some inadequate training going on for what you're asking for. So these other situations, I'm really glad you said pain.
Yeah.
The episode previous to this is, talking to a veterinary behaviorist about um, behavior change as a symptom, and pain is really underdiagnosed. So it is such an important thing to consider, especially if it's very specific what your dog doesn't want to do. Um, it's like they don't want to sit. I ask them to sit and they lay down. Right, that's a huge flag that something is painful about a sit. And they're like, "Okay, okay, if you want me to do something, here's a down." So paying attention to these things are really important. And not forcing dogs to do things in these situations is great because they're communicating to you the only way that they know how, right? The other thing that can be going on, like you said, is emotional. And there's a really cool handout that I give my reactivity clients where it's a emotional scale for their dog from green to red, right?
Mhm.
And green is, happy, relaxed, body language, calm. If you ask them to do a known skill, they can do it. They're taking treats, right? This is that emotional state all the way up to red, which for reactivity clients usually looks like barking, lunging, snapping kinds of behaviors. And when we're there, even if you put cheese or chicken or steak in their mouth, they're gonna spit it out. They can't take food, they can't process that. If you ask them to do something, they're certainly not going to do it. And of course, there's a lot of in between there. There's in between that green and that red. But you start to see those behaviors of not responding to known cues, not taking treats, things as they start to go over threshold. So um, I see it a lot in stressful situations like vet offices, or early in my career, I worked at a doggy daycare. In the doggy daycare waiting room, they're always like, sit, 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 sit. And it's like, the dog just can't right now. They're overstimulated. There's too much going on. They're, being vigilant to all the stuff that's going around. So um, yeah, I'm glad we're talking about that and something to pay attention to for people. It's like if you're asking your dog to do something that you're pretty sure they can do, they know how to do, and they're not, look around what's the environment doing to your dog, right?
And yeah, that I think that also touches on this very common human habit of thinking that it's about us. He's
Mm.
not listening because he doesn't listen to me and he's stubborn and he's disobedient.
Or he doesn't respect
Often
me.
it doesn't respect. Dogs are capable of respect, but yeah. But um but yeah, we're thinking everything is related to us. This behavior is about me and his failure to listen to me. When in reality, the dog is, as you said, overwhelmed in their environment. Another one of my things I repeat to people is you don't study for an exam when you're having a panic attack. And that's kind of what we're asking the dogs to do in those situations. Very common with reactivity situations where early on when I'm working with someone, we'll discuss what to do when you see a trigger, how to handle those situations. And we have to talk about it's time to stop asking your dog to sit when they're
Yes.
struggling.
Yes. Please. Please.
If someone is having a panic attack, if your best friend's having a panic attack, are you gonna be like, sit down right now? um, but it's again, I understand.
Or even look at me. That's another one I see. Look at me, look at me, look at me, instead of the thing that they're struggling with, right? And yeah, yeah, it's it's such a
It's
human
not.
thing to want
It's
that. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and we get a dog because we want that relationship, and people are thinking that that is building a relationship. The dog, is going to orient to them. That's what matters. But we have to begin realizing that our dogs they're sentient beings. It's not about you. They're struggling and they need help. It's our job to help them. So,
absolutely. And on the less extreme side of that, because we're talking about anxiety reactivity cases, which we work with a lot, so we go there. But also, I see this a lot with puppy parents, and the puppy's just plain
Mhm.
distracted because they're, in that developmental stage where they're starting to notice more things around them. And they're like, oh, they used to come the first time I called them. They never used to get into all these things. And I always warn my puppy parents, I'm like, they're going to do all these things. They're going to get into things that they didn't get into when they were younger. They're gonna start blowing you off when you call them, even if, if you haven't trained it properly, because puppies orient to us and give us that, right? Or they're obsessed with us, but then, they go through more development, they start to notice more of the world, and they get really distracted, and suddenly they're not trained because you didn't train them. You just were relying on the puppy that was paying attention to you. So, that's another thing that I see a lot.
yeah, and people worry that, well, this is a slippery slope. He's gonna now become this dog that doesn't listen to me. We've got to nip this in the bud. We've got to put an end to this. And it's exactly what you're saying. The dog is just noticing their environment, you know, exploring. That's a normal part of development.
Yeah,
Uh, and I think something that I encourage puppy parents to do, um, that kinda helps them take that focus off of themselves is, bringing, as long as the puppy is not overly fearful and needing a lot of help and support, for whatever reason, taking the puppy to the park, putting them on a blanket, having them enjoy a chew or a Kong, and just enjoy, be able to experience the world around them, but, not completely engaged with it, and hang for a little bit. And that, I think that can be really encouraging to people to see that uh
yeah,
early on in a puppy, that there are things you can do to help your puppy, maybe be less distracted and focus on one thing. But it's unrealistic to think that you're going to have a um some kind of obedience pro star 4-month-old puppy. It's just
yeah.
unrealistic. Yeah.
The expectations are unreal because of those first few weeks when they really do
Yeah.
just laser focus on you. So that's a surprise for some people that haven't had puppies.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you're dealing with this kind of, stubbornness where it's actually just your dog struggling emotionally, reach out to a trainer.
Mm.
We can help you kind of uh, get them more comfortable in these situations. And but it's a different kind of training. I always tell people that it's actually not obedience training, right? It's not teaching them if you sit, you get a treat. It's teaching them that they're safe essentially. And that's what
Yeah.
we want them to feel. Because when they're safe, then their brain can function and they can listen to you and do the other things that you've taught them to do. But when they don't feel safe for whatever reason, they can't. They just
And
can't.
even just like you brought up that, I use the same concept in teaching clients, that green zone, red zone, and then I have like the yellow zone in the middle. Um, and really often people are um, n- trying to have their dog listen if they're reactive or fearful or have a phobia when they're in that yellow zone, and that middle ground where they're lip licking, ears are back, lower tail, stuff like that. But interspecies communication is hard, and it's not innate for humans to look at those body language signals in dogs and know that the dog is struggling. They're just thinking, he's stubborn, he's not listening, he's stubborn, he won't come this way when I want to go this way on a walk. Well, maybe that's because there was a that barked at him at a fence line, 2.5 weeks ago, and he's still worried about that. Um, so so helping people realize that there are those in between situations where we have to help the dog out as well and help them feel safe in that situation, get them back into the green, happy, smiley, loose dog before we can ask them to do anything.
Yeah, so that's important, the animal's emotional state. But let's so that's that. Let's talk about the other side of it, which I think we get a lot of where they're like, "No, my dog's fine. They just won't listen to me. They just won't do what I ask them to do because they're a jerk or they don't like me or whatever."
Yeah.
So, anyone who's read a Jean Donaldson book, she talks about this and the Disney dog myth that has hurt dogs. So, we anthropomorphize our dogs. And to some extent, I think that leads to better animal welfare because we're like, okay, they do have emotions, they do have needs, they are sentient beings. And that's true. But when we take it too far, our expectation gets too high and we start thinking of them as human. And we expect from them what we would expect from a human on the other side. So then when we see this behavior, we're filtering it through the lens and we're saying they're stubborn, they're a jerk, they're, et cetera, et cetera. So, you have to temper that anthropomorphization with understanding that they are still an animal and they are not doing all of the complex machinations that a human would be doing in that situation.
And I think um yeah, I full on agree that the anthropomorphizing, it is a good thing in a lot of ways because it helps people to see it's not just a dog, if you see your dog as just a dog, what else does that allow you to do to them that, is not going to be a good thing for anybody? But yeah, so understanding that they have feelings and they have needs and everything. Um but they're not, um, your BFF that is gonna understand everything you're saying. And for me, the most helpful thing that I'm sure my clients are sick of hearing me say this, but your dog has the capacity of a 2 to 2.5-year-old child. So we can think of them as a human, sure, a human toddler. Like, what do you expect out of a 2.5-year-old baby? Very little. They're not trying to steal your credit cards and, you know, timeshare. They're not trying to run your house and, tell you, like, when you can and can't order pizza. They're that's not their goal. They're just trying to get their needs met. That's it.
Mhm. And they also have big feels, which I think also goes really well is, those tantrums that they throw when they're this age because they just don't understand how to mitigate this sudden rush of emotion.
Yeah.
And when they're tired, they need a nap.
Yeah.
It's really helpful to think of them as toddlers. Really.
Yeah. And anything, kind of ruin I've actually, it's a little bit of a tangent, if you'll allow
No,
go, but, I grew up in the '90s, and dogs were very much dogs. We had I had a dog that lived outside for my, most of my life growing up, and that was very sad to me as a kid. But now, my parents, they have a senior dog now, and helping them understand anything you wouldn't do to a toddler, you shouldn't do to your dog. Talk to her like she's a toddler. And that for them and their, in their age bracket in that situation has seemed to really make an impact. Dogs don't live outside at my parents' house anymore. That no longer is the case. The dog has a very plush, comfy life inside.
sure.
And yeah, but just helping people think through, oh, this is just a baby. This is a baby with very few skills. And if I want to teach them to do things, we really again have to start at square one. I can't be asking them to do these really complicated things that they just don't have the capacity for that. But I think something important to touch on is when we hear people say, well, I never had this problem with my last dog. He just listened to me. He knew what I was thinking and he just did it. And we never had these problems.
Yeah.
And this is again, a Gene Donaldson, something from the Academy for Dog Trainers that when I was in school really was kind of a light bulb moment for me. Um, well, when we have dogs like that, it's because those are what Gene calls soft dogs. They are dogs that are very sensitive to tones. If you say, hey, don't go over there, as people often do say things like that to their dog and that kind of little like harsh tone, the dog's like, oh, brother, I'm not going over there. Um, and comes right back to your side because they're nervous, right? Um, and that kind of solidifies that belief people have that the dog respects them. The dog the dog respects them, they listen, and I'm a straight shooter with people I work with. I wish I could sugarcoat things better. I don't really know how, but I will just tell them as uncomfortable as it is, it's not respect, it's just fear. So, dogs don't have the ability to understand right or wrong. They only understand safe or unsafe. So, if you shouted at them for doing XYZ thing, they don't know that that thing is wrong. They just know that they're not safe when they do that thing. And is that really a relationship we want to have with our dogs? Is that how you want them to see you? Do we want this like hierarchical fear-based um companionship type of relationship? I don't. So,
Yeah. And some dogs are really sensitive, even if you're not necessarily trying to create
yeah.
fear for that dog, you might. And whereas some dogs, they bounce around like crazy. You're screaming at them, they don't care. So it's, yeah, that's each individual.
Yeah, yeah, and that's such a good point. Yeah, there's plenty of dogs who, they're jumping up at people's faces and people are like, "Off, off." And the dog's like,
I'm
"Gonna
having a
pissed."
blast. Exactly. Yeah. No, it's so true. So these dogs that we think are just not listening to us, they're undertrained, as you said. So this is another thing. And I do have an episode where I talked to another Gene Donaldson graduate
Oh,
about the 3Ds,
oh,
right?
yeah.
So distance, duration, distractions. These are the ways that we proof these behaviors because the mistakes that people are making is teach their dog to sit and they sit a few times and they're like, oh my God, and they know it now. And then, yeah, you're in the line at Starbucks where there's a million things going on and you're like, sit. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. One could be stress, still could be that first
Yeah.
situation. But two, even if not, even if they're just excited, like the distractions are too high. Okay.
Mm.
Or you can't put them in a sit, stay, and walk 45 feet away. It's not the same as you being able to take a step back and come back. So these things have to be taught and then they have to be proofed. And then the other thing I think people need to be careful about is what is the cue? If your dog knows the skill, maybe the cue isn't what you think it is. So, a good example of this is the way I taught drop it to Scarlett. Apparently, I used a very high pitch because if I say drop it, she doesn't. But if I say drop it,
Yeah.
it's it right up.
That's me too. Yeah.
So be careful what your cue is. And that's not their fault. That's how you taught them. That's what they know what it means. So um, it could be all of those things, which is why, your dog's not listening to you, even though you think that they should or that they know. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I also often train with a very high pitched voice that when I hear myself back in videos, I'm cringing. But it's dogs love those high pitches. Yeah, it's fun. I think it's friendly and fun to them. So I think
Yeah.
we've been reinforced to do that because it's effective, like as handlers and trainers. Um but yeah, that's another when I bring my dog to the hardware store, when I bring my dog to the pet store, when I We try to go out and sit somewhere. I want to be able to do that with them. Not all dogs, like you said, not all dogs enjoy that kind of stuff. Not all dogs,
Definitely.
many dogs would rather be at home curled up in their bed and then see you when you come home from the ice cream shop or whatever. But yeah, if your dog truly does enjoy those situations, if they enjoy being approached by new people, um, if they love going in the car and things like that, then working up to that is that's a 15-step training plan. Like we've gotta work up to that point, and that's probably gonna involve, if we want to think about Starbucks, it's probably gonna involve going to Starbucks, not going inside. And, maybe you're practicing just outside of the store. And then you walk in when there's very few people in there, um, and you just practice a couple of easy things that your dog already knows how to do, and you work up to your sit, you work up to the duration sit stay. Um, it's people's expectations versus the amount of training they want to put in or often know how to put in on their own,
Yeah.
are
It's
not
hard.
in line.
I certainly didn't know how to train a dog until I went to school and learned how to train a dog. I mean,
Either. Yeah.
and you have to be careful because it's an unregulated industry. So there are people out there selling their services as dog trainers who never actually learned how to train a dog.
I
They're just had a lot of dogs, which means they probably just learned how to intimidate them into submission. So, when you actually learn, you learn about learning theory and how to modify behavior, how to teach, how to use reinforcement. So, if you don't know that, there's no shame in taking a class. Take your puppy to a puppy class. Please take your puppy to a puppy class. Take
Yeah.
your dog to an obedience class. I know working privately with trainers is very expensive. If you can, it's a great experience. Not everybody can afford it, but that's why this podcast exists. To try to help people with that, and also like classes can be very affordable compared to like working together. But
Yeah, and then you can take what you learned in that class and start applying it in different situations. It's that class is probably going to be like 45 minutes to an hour a week, but then if you want your dog to progress in other situations, take it on the road. Take it out, practice it hard, practice at home, practice in your yard, practice in your front yard, practice like on the sidewalk in the neighborhood. It's a lot of dogs are not great generalizers. And so they need a lot of help. Fear, they're great at generalizing fear. If you scare a dog, they're going to become fearful very fast, but they're not great at generalizing um,
cues.
cues and things that don't come natural to them, which is training, the things we ask our dogs to do in training.
These arbitrary things that we've asked them to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that um, dog training is an unregulated field, and as trainers, you and I know that, and we see the um the repercussions of that training often when we work with people who have worked with aversive or uncredentialed trainers in the past. And so often I would say, in my experience, 100% of the time, the people that go to those types of trainers that are not credentialed and use aversives, their intentions are in a good place. They
The
truly.
dog owner's intentions, not
Yes.
the trainer teaching it. I goes. I mean, you maybe don't know better, but I think if you're charging people for your services, you should know better.
I agree. I agree. And I'm very much in the camp of, at least with clients, people are doing dog owners, they're doing the best they
Yeah.
can. They're doing the best they can for their dogs. And
And this is potentially your first dog or your first puppy at 15 years. And if you don't know what you're looking for when you're looking for a trainer, it's very, very easy to get bad information from bad actors.
yeah, and the if you buy an e-collar or you buy a prong collar, nowhere on that label is it going to say this device, caution, this device is shown in scientific studies to cause aggression, avoidance, anxiety, the three A's of, that type of training. So, It's just important that people just have that awareness, and I think it's up to people like us to try to educate on the risks of that. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. So your dog's not being stubborn. Your dog's not a jerk.
No.
They're smart and they need to learn all of the cues that you want in the situations that you want gradually in baby steps. Add those 3Ds, distance, duration, distractions. And I love that you said take them on the road. I call them field trips, you wanna take puppies on field trips for socialization, obviously keeping them safe, like you said, on a blanket or something, before they get their shots, but don't wait for their shots. Take them out and socialize them. But, if you're training an adolescent dog or an adult dog, yeah, these field trips are great. Home Depot or the other hardware stores, they let you take dogs in. Such a great place with large things moving around. During the holidays, they have these giant displays. There's a lot of
And
things,
Halloween, yeah.
introduce your dog to, work within a safe environment kind of thing. So I love this hardware stores, coffee shops, pet stores. Here, a lot of the TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Ross kind of places will let you bring dogs in. So, take them on the road. But what I tell people is don't bring your dog to the thing you need to do. You're taking them out for them. So if I'm going to Home Depot, I don't have a list that I need to get done and I need to go through the line and I need to do this and the dog just hope they do okay. We're going in, I'm working with the dog, I'm watching the dog, we're leaving while everything has still been good and positive. Maybe we only spent 10 minutes there. Right? And you said Starbucks. Starbucks before brunch, please, so that you can pick up your coffee and leave, as opposed to like we're here and we can't leave because our food's coming and or we need the check, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, when you're working with the dogs, these are for them and not. I think that's another mistake people make. They just bring them along for the things that they want to do, and it's maybe too much. Bring them to the office all day. It's maybe too much for where they are.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the perception that needs to change a little bit around dogs and around their existence with us as our companions. It's pretty common that people will say to me that their goal is, I want my dog to be able to just come everywhere with me. I want him to be my
Or I want them to be a therapy dog.
yeah, yeah, and, uh, that's a wonderful goal for some dogs. Most dogs are not cut out for that, not interested in that, and it's not gonna serve them. Um, so helping people accept that that's maybe not gonna happen, but, for the well-being of the dog, but what are some great things that you guys can do together? What are some things we can do? I've heard you in other, episodes talk about how this is our world is created for humans, not for dogs. Just having expectations that are out of line with what the dog can realistically do and what they want to do, for their what their nervous system can handle, and what are things we can do, things that you guys can do together that's going to be enriching for both of you. Um, and I have the same kind of perspective on walks as well. If you want to get a really good walk in, you want to get your exercise, get your steps in, go head out and do that, but don't bring your dog most of the time. Like when you take your dog out, let them sniff, let them enjoy that walk, let them enjoy that time. And if you're dragging them along trying to get in your 10,000 steps, it's probably not going to be very enjoyable.
Yeah, and people are always like, "But I want them to get exercise." That sniffing will be more mental exercise for them than just randomly walking with you, I promise. Much more beneficial for them. One more thing that you said that I wanna touch on a little bit more, and that is breed. When people have this expectation, that this breed is stubborn or their dog is stubborn because they are this breed, and we'll just preface everything we say with every dog is an individual. There are breed characteristics, but they're they could be totally not like their breed characteristics, the dog that you actually bring home. So, when we talk about this, we're going to talk really broad strokes, and it's not this breed is this, even if it's generalized a little bit.
Very, very true. I agree. And At the same time, there are breeds that are bred to be more independent. That it's their that hound dogs. I have a hound dog, and hounds, for example, are bred to go ahead of the hunter and search out for what the hunter is looking for. So they're bred to go out on their own and start sniffing. So that's probably not what most people are hoping for when you get a dog. So doing some research before you choose a breed, but also uh yes, I have my hound dog does enjoy sniffing. She does enjoy her independence. She is also wonderfully trained and has awesome skills to that she can use in a lot of different scenarios. Certainly not Destiny.
Yeah, absolutely. Some other independent breeds, the terrier class, because they were bred to, again, work independently. Um, Dachshunds, which people tend to think are like this like small, quiet house dog, that were literally bred to dig into like tunnels and get rodents out of the ground all by themselves. So they're very independent. Oh, she's sleeping. There she is. I'm distracted by my own dog. Oh, okay. Anyway, but yeah, so again, every dog is an individual, but these breed characteristics exist, and meeting those needs are really important and having those expectations. But the expectation that they're stubborn or they're stubborn because of that breed is just a misinterpretation of what you're seeing.
And having that perspective that the dog is not behaving because they're stubborn is not going to help you progress their training at all. So, what can we do to actually make a difference, make changes, improve the situation rather than, kind of obsessing about why are they like this? What's causing um
Yeah,
wandering in the desert about that.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's such a good point. You gotta look at the skills that they actually need and the situation you want it in, and put that 15-step training plan together, and they can get there. The dogs are really smart.
They're more than capable.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by and chatting. I really appreciate it, and all the thought that you put into, this topic and explaining it to people. Thanks a lot.
Oh, it was lovely talking to you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to the Enlightened Pet Behavior Podcast. I hope you and your beloved pets have found valuable insights for a more harmonious life together. Please remember that this podcast provides educational information only and is not a substitute for professional veterinary or behavioral advice. If you need personalized support, please don't hesitate to contact me and we can explore how we can work together to achieve your pet behavior goals. You can reach me at enlightenedpetbehavior.com or via email at susan@enlightenedpetbehavior.com. This episode was edited by Monty Light. Special thanks to Mac Light for composing the podcast's music. You can find him at maclightsongwriter.com. Treasure those fur babies, and I'll talk to you next time.